All right, so let's continue where we left and let's start with chapter number 2, C fundamentals. So as the name of the chapter says, we are going to study some fundamental concepts of the C programming language over here. So once again, if you want, give these headings, or maybe you can wait till the entire screen gets filled and then you can take a screenshot. Okay. So let's start with these fundamental concepts. So the first fundamental concept over here is that of variables. Variables. Okay. Now, what is a variable? So very simple. Pay attention to the name and derive the meaning from the name itself. A variable is an element whose value keeps on changing. So I hope you have done your algebra. So in algebra, you use variables like A, B, C. Okay. You write statements like A is equal to B plus C and so on. So the way you use variables in algebra, you can use variables in C programming also. So a variable is basically a program element whose value can keep on changing, whose value can keep on varying. So what these variables normally do is they store some values or they store some results. So when you're doing a program, you will need many variables to store the values which you are using in that particular program. Okay. The next thing is identifiers and keywords. So let's understand what are keywords. So these keywords are basically some reserved words, which have a predefined meaning in C language. I repeat, they are reserved words and they have a predefined meaning in C language. So to understand this, let's take some example. Let's say I write something like this, int space m, or I write something like this, float space x. Okay. So when I'm writing int space m, what I'm doing is I'm telling the C compiler to create a variable called m, which will store integer values. Now, what are integer values? So integers are those numbers which do not have a decimal point. So numbers like 243, 4658 are integers. Similarly, when I write float space x, I am telling the compiler to create a variable x which can store floating point values. So what are floating point values? Floating point values are those numbers which have a decimal point in between. For example, 24.3, 4.658 and so on. Now, what you need to understand over here is that is int and float, both of them are keywords. Yes, you heard it right. They're keywords. So what are keywords? So keywords are those words which have a predefined meaning. So predefined meaning means the C compiler already knows that int means integer. Float means numbers having a decimal point. The C compiler already knows their meaning. It is predefined. Moreover, they are reserved words. Reserved means what? That int can be used only for creating integers. Float is reserved for the purpose of creating floating point numbers. So that way in C language, there are approximately 32 keywords like int, float, long, if, while, for, and so on. You don't need to learn these keywords. As we move ahead in the syllabus, you will automatically keep learning the new keywords. There is one restriction about all keywords, and that restriction is that these keywords must be given in lowercase. So let's say I write a statement like this. Let's say I write a statement like this, int space m. Now, if you write this statement, the compiler will report an error because there is no keyword int where I is capital. So this is wrong and this is correct. Okay. All right. So now you understood what are keywords. Now what are identifiers? So please pay good attention, otherwise you may find it confusing. So what happens is that whenever you are doing a C program, in that C program, you will use many variables. Then you will use arrays. Then you will use functions. Then you will use structures and many other things. Now, you don't know what is an array, what is a function, what is a structure. You just know what is a variable. But that's okay. All you need to understand is, as a programmer, I repeat, as a programmer, you need to assign certain names to these things. So if you are the programmer, you will have to give some name to an array, to a function, to a structure. So any name which a programmer gives to anybody in the program is called an identifier. I repeat, any name which a programmer gives to any program element is called an identifier. So if you're really attentive, can you tell me, do you see any identifiers on the screen? Come on, pause the video and think about it. Of course there are. So for example, A, B, C, M, X, all these are identifiers. Okay. So they are basically those names which the programmer has chosen. Now tell me one thing, instead of writing M over here, over here, let's say I write int mi, something like this. So let's say I use the name mi instead of m. So tell me, is it valid or invalid? Valid. Instead of using the name x, only x, let's say I use the name xy, is it valid? Yes, valid. But let's say instead of writing int over here, I write this way, int, int. Okay, instead of writing float over here, let's say I change the spelling over here. I give the spelling as this, FLAOT space XY. So tell me one thing, is this valid? Is this valid? The answer is no. Why? Because this and this were meant to be keywords. So basically, keywords are those words which you cannot write the way you want. You have to follow only those keywords which are allowed in the language. Whereas identifiers are names which you can give the way you want to. Okay. So simple. Any name which you give to anybody in the program is called an identifier. Please understand, every variable is an identifier. So this is an identifier, this is an identifier. So every variable is an identifier, but every identifier need not be a variable. Okay, a variable can be an array or a function or a structure or anything else. All right. Anyway, let's move forward. Now, the next topic is declarations and data types. Declarations and data types. So pay attention. In the earlier topic, you saw a statement like this, int space m. Okay. Then you saw something like this, float space x. All right. Then I may write something like also this. Double space, let's say a semicolon. Then I may write something like this, char space, let's say b semicolon. Or I may write something like int space c comma d semicolon. This is a comma, this one. Okay, and this is a semicolon. Now, all these statements over here, I repeat, all these statements over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are called declarations. Declarations. So what is a declaration? Very simple. A declaration is a statement. सबसे पहले ये बात समझो कि declaration is a statement which associates a variable or a group of variables with one particular data type. I repeat, it is a statement which associates a variable or a group of variables with one particular data type. So when you write this statement, the compiler creates a variable m of data, a variable m which can store integers. When you write this, it creates a variable x which can store floating point values. Okay, I will explain these two later on. When you write the last statement in c comma d, the compiler creates two variables c and d which can store integers. So basically what happens is whenever you write a declaration, the compiler will create those variables and the variables can now store one particular kind of value. Okay. So I hope you understood what is a declaration. So here onwards, whenever you write a program, in that program, you will have to write multiple declarations. Why? Because you need to create variables. So declarations are written to create variables. Okay. Now, what are data types? So very simple. Please understand this properly. सबसे पहले डेटा का क्या मतलब होता है? तो डेटा का मतलब होता है वैल्यूज, डेटा का मतलब होता है वैल्यूज, डेटा का मतलब होता है इंफॉर्मेशन, बट विल स्टिक टू दिस वर्ड वैल्यूज। होता क्या है कि जब हम कोई प्रोग्राम करते हैं ना तो उसमें हम बहुत सारे वैल्यूज यूज करते हैं। ओके, वी यूज मल्टीपल वैल्यूज इन दैट प्रोग्राम एंड दीज वैल्यूज कैन बी डिवाइडेड into different categories, into different types, and each category over here is called a data type. If you didn't understand, no problem. Let me write some data over here. So now I'll write some data over here. Okay, I'll write 46, 29.5, 358, 460, 4629, 6.7, 2.9. Now, if I'm asking you, see, this is some data. This is some data. Now, if I'm asking you to divide this data into two categories, what those two categories will be? I repeat, I'm asking you to divide this data into two categories. What those two categories will be? Tell me. So first, you will have the category of integers, which will contain 46, 358, 4629. Then you have the category of float, which will contain this, this, and this. Okay. So जिस तरह से you have int and float as two categories, there are few other categories also. So now for time being, we'll just study two other categories. Okay. We'll study two more data types. By the way, I hope you have realized that int and float are called data types. That means the type of data. Now we'll study just two more data types, and that is double, double, and char. Okay. Chalo. Now you tell me, what does integer store? What does this data type int will store? So it will store integers. Float will store what? So it will store numbers having decimal point. Double will store what? Listen to me carefully. Double will also store numbers with decimal point, but they can store bigger numbers. It can store bigger numbers. So what happens is this float now, it has a certain range. Okay. And double also has a certain range, but the range is much higher, much bigger, much longer. So if you don't understand double for time being, it's okay. It's leave it. Just understand that int will store integers like this. Float will store floating point numbers like this. Now what is a char? So let's say I write a statement like this. By the way, char stands for character, character. So let's say I write a statement like this, char space b. So now what I'm doing, listen carefully. Now I'm creating a variable called b, and this variable b can store any single character which you see on the keyboard. So if you're watching this on the computer, look at the keyboard. So your keyboard will have multiple keys and each key will have a character on it. So when you write a statement like this one, char space b, What you are doing is you are creating a variable called b, and this b can store any single character. So for example, b can store hash, b can store capital Y, b can store any digit like 7. By the way, one small simple thing, आज के बाद जब भी मैं डिजिट्स बोलूंगा, डिजिट्स, डिजिट्स का मतलब होता है नंबर्स फ्रॉम 0 to 9. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are called digits. Digits. Okay. So once again, if B is of data type char, it can store any character. That character can be a hash, Y, 7, anything, anything, anything. Okay. So I hope you understood what is a data type. If you did not understand the data type double, it's okay. All right, don't worry about it. Now let's move further. Now, let me just erase this. The next heading over here is constants. Constants. Okay. Now let's say I write a statement like this. What statement? B is equal to C plus 98. Okay. Now in this statement, B and C are variables and 98 is what? 98 is actually a constant. So a constant is that program element whose value will never change. I repeat, a constant is that program element whose value will never change. On the other hand, variables will keep on changing in value. Okay. Now, constants are of 4 types. You already know them in some way. Okay. Now, what 4 types? So, listen to this very carefully. So, constants are of 4 types. The first type is called integer. All right. The second type is called real, or floating point constants, real constant or floating point constant. All right. The next one, just a minute, guys, just a minute. All right. So next is integer, next is real or floating point constants. All right. Then you have character constants. You have character constants, and finally you have a string constant. So you have integer constant, real or floating point constant, character constant, string constant. Okay. Now let's quickly understand what these constants are. Okay. So now what is an integer constant? Very simple. Any integer number is called an integer constant. I repeat, any integer number is called an integer constant. So a number like 7, a number like 254, a number like 4698, all of them are integer constants. So any integer number is called integer constant. Okay. Then you have real or floating point constant. So something like 7.0, something like 25.4, something like, look at this carefully, 4.698, E plus 0.3 is a floating point constant. Now, I'm sure you understood this, You may wonder, what is this? What is this? So basically, this thing which I wrote now, E, this E stands for exponent, And writing 4.698 E plus 0.3 is same as writing 4.698 into 10 raised to plus 3. So this part into 10 raised to 3. In C language, you cannot write it this way because in C compiler, in C language, you cannot use superscripts like this. So you have to write it like this, E plus 0, 3. Or you can simply write E plus 3, okay? Where E stands for exponent and this E can be given in lowercase or uppercase. Anyway, the whole point over here is numbers like these are called real or floating point constants. उसके बाद आता है कैरेक्टर कांस्टेंट ओके so a character constant is any single character in single quotes. I repeat, a character constant is any single character in single quotes. So for example, if you write character M in single quotes, it is character constant. 7 in single quotes is character constant. Okay. Hash in single quotes is character constant. So इसको बोलते हैं character constant. Now what is a string constant? A string constant is a collection of characters in double quotes. A string constant is a collection of characters in double quotes. So for example, in double quotes, you may write 8 a.m. Okay. In double quotes, you may give only one character, let's say question mark. In double quotes, you may not give any character, you may give zero characters. So in double quotes, if you give 0 characters, 1 character, multiple characters, तो उसको बोलते हैं string constant. Okay. Now over here, I also need to introduce to you the concept of ASCII values. अब थोड़ा ध्यान से सुनना, be attentive. Now ASCII stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. I repeat, it stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. होता क्या है ना, तुम्हारा जो कंप्यूटर का कीबोर्ड है इसमें बहुत सारे कैरेक्टर्स हैं. Now every character has an equivalent integer value. I repeat, every character has an equivalent integer value. Okay. 1 minute, just 1 minute. All right. So what I was saying is that every character on the keyboard has an equivalent integer value. For example, if you take capital A to capital Z, उनका equivalent integer values होता है 65 to 90. Small a to small z is 97 to 122. And digits 0 to 9 have 48 to 57. Okay. अभी चलो लेट मी सी तुम्हारा ध्यान है क्या नहीं कि कैपिटल ए का इक्विवेलेंट इंटीजर वैल्यू क्या है, वो है 65. और ये जो इक्विवेलेंट इंटीजर वैल्यू है ना उसको बोलता है ASCII वैल्यूज, अमेरिकन स्टैंडर्ड कोड फॉर इंफॉर्मेशन इंटरचेंज. So capital A to Z have ASCII values 65 to 90. Small a to z have ASCII values 97 to 122. 0 to 9 have ASCII values 48 to 57. एक छोटी सी बात ये है कि ऐसा मत सोचो कि सिर्फ इन कैरेक्टर्स का ASCII वैल्यू होता है. ओके. तुम्हारे कीबोर्ड पे जो भी तुमको कैरेक्टर दिखता है ना सबका ASCII वैल्यू होता है, सबका. तो तुम्हारे प्रिंटेड नोट्स में पेज नंबर 65 में मैंने सबका ASCII वैल्यू दिया है, एक बार तुम चेक करना. ठीक है. एनीवे, अब होता क्या है ना, जब तुम कीबोर्ड पे समझो कैपिटल ए प्रेस कर रहे हो, सो व्हेन यू आर प्रेसिंग कैपिटल ए ऑन द कीबोर्ड, द कंपाइलर विल नॉट रीड इट, सॉरी, द कंप्यूटर विल नॉट रीड इट एज कैपिटल ए, इट विल रीड इट एज 65. So tell me one thing, when you are pressing 8, the computer will read it as 56. When you are pressing small b, what that will be? 98. ठीक है. Now coming back to the topic over here, now very important, please be very attentive. Okay. Let's say you are doing a C program, and in that C program, you write two expressions. Okay. The first one you are writing, the first one, let's say you are writing, let's say 5 plus 7. And the next one you're writing 5 plus character 7. Character 7. Okay. Now answer a very simple question. What is the value of 5 plus 7? So it will be 12. 12. Okay. What will be the value of 5 plus character 7? Any guess? Can you pause the video and think what it would be? 5 plus character 7. So 5 plus character 7 would be 60. 60. Now the question is how I got 60. So the rule is very simple. See, when you are using a character, see, I have given this in single quotes. Huh? So what happens is for a layman का मतलब रास्ते पे चलने वाला आदमी. So for a layman, this 7 and this 7 may be same, but not for a student of programming. For a student of programming, this is number 7 and this is character 7. तो ये जो नंबर 7 है ना, इसका न्यूमरिक वैल्यू होता है 7. तो तुम जब 5 प्लस 7 करोगे तो 7 ऐड होगा. बट जब तुम कैरेक्टर 7 को ऐड करोगे तो कैरेक्टर 7 का न्यूमरिक वैल्यू क्या होगा? उसका ASCII वैल्यू. तो देखो 9 का ASCII वैल्यू है 57, तो 8 का 56 होगा, तो 7 का क्या होगा? 55. तो इसलिए इधर एक्चुअली 55 आ जाएगा. 5 प्लस 55 60. एक और छोटी सी बात समझो, तुमने ऐसा लिखा 5 प्लस 7, डबल कोट्स में 7 लिखा. ठीक है, तो ये क्या होगा? तो ये आएगा एरर. एरर क्यों आएगा पता है? क्योंकि देखो ये जो 7 है ना, ये भी डबल कोट्स में है. डबल कोट्स का मतलब अब ये स्ट्रिंग हो गया है. एंड इन सी लैंग्वेज स्ट्रिंग्स डू नॉट हैव अ न्यूमरिक वैल्यू. स्ट्रिंग्स डू नॉट हैव अ न्यूमरिक वैल्यू. यानी इसका मतलब उनको तुम ऐड सब्ट्रैक्ट वो सब नहीं कर सकते हो. तो तुम अगर एडिशन करने का ट्राई करोगे तो एरर आएगा. ठीक है. Finally, let's take this last topic, initialization. Now, what is initialization? Very simple. Can you answer in one or two words what is the statement called? So it is called declaration. What is this statement called? Declaration. Now, if you want, you can give a value to the variable right at the time of declaration. And if you give a value right at the time of declaration, तो उसको बोलते initialization. समझो मैंने ऐसा लिखा int c कॉमा डी सेमीकोलन. तो देखो ये डिक्लेरेशन है. अब बीच में समझो मैंने लिख दिया इक्वल टू 5 ऐसे. सो अभी ये जो पूरा स्टेटमेंट है ना, पूरा इसको बोलते हैं डिक्लेरेशन एंड इनिशियलाइजेशन. टेल मी हियर हाउ मेनी वेरिएबल्स आर डिक्लेयर्ड. सो two variables are declared. Be attentive. Over here, two variables are declared. Okay. And how many are initialized? Only one is initialized. कौन सा initialized हुआ है by the way? Variable C. तो बेसिकली ये जो सेमीकोलन है ना, ये इसके पहले अगर तुम किसी वेरिएबल को वैल्यू देते हो तो उसको बोलते हैं इनिशियलाइजेशन. आई रिपीट, उसको बोलते हैं इनिशियलाइजेशन. ओके. So these were some of the fundamental concepts of the C programming language which you need to know to understand the subsequent topics. So please take a screenshot of this and please try to remember all this.